Division is not limited to whole numbers. You can divide a decimal with another decimal. Let's take a look at a picture to understand it a little bit better before we start getting into writing it in long division. So we have a little example here. If we have an item that is 2.5 feet long and divide it into sections that are 0.5 feet long, how many sections will we make? So we have an item here, say a piece of wood or a sandwich that is 2.5 feet long, and we want to divide it into little 1/2 foot sections. So I've drawn my 2.5 feet here, and then I've divided it into a little 1/2 foot section, another 1/2 foot section, another 1/2 foot, 1/2 a foot, 1/2 a foot, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. And so we can see that we've taken this 2.5 length and we've divided it by 0.5, and we've found that we have 5 little 1/2 foot sections. So if we were to write this problem using a division sentence, write it mathematically, it would look like this. 2.5 divided by 0.5 equals 5. And to go with our drawing, it would be 2.5 length divided into 0.5 little sections gives us 5 pieces or 5 sections. When we're working on a problem in which we divide a decimal number by a decimal number, we can also perform long division to find the answer. Now, when the divisor is a decimal, the first thing you need to do is to adjust the number so that the divisor is a whole number. Your divisor cannot be left as a decimal. So, for example, we have our dividend here of 1.6 divided by our divisor of 0.8. Our divisor is a decimal, and we must adjust that to make it a whole number before we begin our division work. So to divide these two numbers, we must manipulate the numbers so that the divisor, 0.8, is a whole number. To change 0.8 to a whole number, the whole number 8, requires us to move the decimal point 1 position to the right, which is equivalent to multiplying by 10. So if I come over here and I just move this decimal place over 1 position to the right and remove it from where it was, I have basically just multiplied 0.8 by 10. Well, if I just go over here and do this to my divisor, it is going to completely change the quotient. So to make up for that, we need to come over to our dividend and also multiply that by 10, or also move over the decimal point 1 position to the right. So we have to do the same thing over here to our dividend and move our decimal over here to after the 6. So we basically just multiplied both our divisor and our dividend by 10 and made this now a problem of 16 divided by 8 equals what number? So now you do not have a decimal in the divisor. You have a whole number, and this is what we wanted to achieve. Let's take a closer look at how and why this works to make this kind of adjustment to our decimal problems with division. As we have already learned, division is related directly to fractions. The dividend is equivalent to the numerator, and the divisor is equivalent to the denominator. So if I were to write 1.6, my original problem, which is what my original problem was 1.6 divided by 0.8. If I were to write this original problem as a fraction, the dividend here would be my numerator, and I would put 1.6 in the numerator, and this divisor, my 0.8, would be equivalent to the denominator. So I would put 0.8 here in the denominator. So 1.6 divided by 0.8 is the same as writing it as a fraction. And if I write it as a fraction, I would read it again as 1.6 divided by 0.8. Now, when we have a fraction, the numerator and the denominator, and we multiply both numbers by 10, let's take a look at what happens. If I have 1.6 over 0.8, so I have a fraction, and I'm going to multiply both numbers by 10, times 10 and times 10. So I'm looking at it as a fraction here, doing the same thing that we did up here when we were moving our decimal places one position over to the right. Now, when we multiply both numbers by 10 over 10, it's the same as multiplying this fraction by 10 over 10, and we know that any number over itself is equal to 1. So when we multiply both parts of the division equation by 10, the value of the whole expression is simply being multiplied by 1, which does not change its value. And so what ends up happening here is I end up with 1.6 times 10. I move my decimal place one position to the right, just like I did up here, and I end up with 16 in my numerator. And then 0.8 times 10, moving my decimal place one position to the right, I end up with 8 in my denominator. And so now I have a very simple division problem. 16 divided by 8. We all know, because we know our math facts, that 16 divided by 8 equals 2. And so I have found the answer to my original problem of 1.6 divided by 0.8, or 1.6 divided by 0.8 equals 2.